What it do, everyone? I am not a LARPer, and I just got back from watching Supergirl, the DCU's second movie, and oof, I think it was a bit of a miss. Misfire from the gun, if you will. Which is incredibly unfortunate and honestly surprising considering James Gunn stated that the script for Supergirl was out of this world. And the fact that he had so much confidence in the script that he greenlit the movie almost immediately, making it the second DCU film. Now, I don't think it was one of the worst superhero movies ever made, which is a lot of criticism that this movie's getting from a lot of other critics. I think a lot of the criticism that I'm hearing is not made in good faith and is rather trying to push a certain agenda against the DCU. So today I want to give my own thoughts on the movie, and I want to make this about the movie, not about anything behind the scenes, not about anything about James Gunn, and not anything certainly about Millie Alcock. Because it's really unfortunate that a lot of the criticism for the movie comes from online losers that are talking about Millie Alcock's appearance and their thoughts on it. That's not what this movie's about, so let's focus on the movie at hand. So right off the bat, I just want to say that the movie is mid. In my opinion, I think the movie's a 5 out of 10, maybe a 4 out of 10 if I really start to think about it even more. It really doesn't try too much, and it just feels like we're back in the slop era of superhero movies. And that is to say that this isn't a traditional superhero movie. It's not really fair to call it that. It's a space adventure. But also, when this movie was announced, it was stated that it was going to be an adaptation of Woman of Tomorrow, which is one of the most widely acclaimed stories among DC Comics in the past 20 years. And let me tell you right now, it is a very bad adaptation of the story. So much so that just recently, to my knowledge, they started saying it wasn't a direct adaptation, but rather saying it was a loose adaptation. That's not what we were promised at the start. If we are judging this movie as an adaptation of that story, it's really a 2 or a 3 out of 10. For those of you who haven't seen the movie or read the book yet, this is your warning that this video will contain spoilers for both. So go ahead and read Woman of Tomorrow and go watch the movie and come back later. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, Woman of Tomorrow is widely considered Tom King's best work, and honestly probably also considered the best Supergirl comic. But in that story, we follow a little girl named Ruthie, whose father was slain by a man named Creme of the Yellow Hills, a man from her planet. So as is such, she seeks out someone who will assist in her revenge on Creme of the Yellow Hills to be able to see the end of his life. In her search, she comes across Supergirl, who she inevitably believes will be the person to help her in her journey. Initially, Supergirl doesn't want to assist Ruthie in this revenge quest, but eventually comes to her senses when Creme attacks her dog, Crypto. So the story follows her quest along the lengths of the universe, going from planet to planet and galaxy to galaxy to hunt Creme down. The majority of the story doesn't really involve Creme. His placement in the story really relies on breadcrumbs building him up to be this horrible scumbag of a person, and believe me, he really is among the worst of the worst. But in actuality, he isn't built to be the typical superhero movie villain. He really is just a henchman part of a bigger group. Nothing particularly special about him. The story doesn't focus on him really, it's really mostly about the story between Ruthie and Kara, and their relationship and how it builds in the story. And when they eventually do find and capture Creme, there is a lot of tension about what they should do with him. All this time, Ruthie's been seeking revenge against him, but Kara still believes that killing is not the way. The story ends on a very beautiful note with a time jump, where it shows Ruthie as a much older woman, and Kara relatively the same age. I'm not totally sure if that involved time dilation or maybe an unreliable narrator, but all in all, the story ends with Ruthie as an old woman and Kara bringing Creme out of the Phantom Zone, being trapped there for 300 years, and after all that time, genuinely being redeemed and wanting nothing but forgiveness from his victims or the family of his victims, including Ruthie. The story ends with him on his knees begging for forgiveness. But in the last page, she just bonks him on the head with the butt of her father's sword and walks away, showing that there is a difference between redemption and forgiveness. There are plenty of details I'm leaving out from the story right now, but those are the essentials to get the point across that this movie is wildly different. It takes the very loose basis of that story and just kind of takes a dump on it. The first and probably most notable difference comes in the form of the visuals. One of the most praised aspects of the comic is the fact that the art is something you're not going to see anywhere else in any other book. The colors are popping and vibrant and beautiful. Every planet is visually distinct from the next, with remarkable landscapes and terrains. But in the movie, they're all just kind of blended together in this brown, smudgy look. I can show you 3 pictures from the comic of 3 different planets, and without me saying anything, you would be able to tell that they're 3 different planets. Whereas if I were to do the same thing with the movie, they might as well just be the same location. And aside from the visuals, the movie goes in a lot of the same directions the book goes, but changes enough to just make the scenes worse. For an example, in the book, when they're on the bus together in space, the scene features Kara fighting a space dragon and is a very notable moment in the story because of how beautiful it is and how, I don't know, just cool it is. But then in the movie, they're captured by space pirates and it's just kind of a generic fight, I guess. And even with the example of the planet with the green sun, that's an entire issue in the book. And it's a whole issue about how Ruthie is capable on her own. It's finally an issue where it's not Supergirl defending Ruthie, it's Ruthie defending Supergirl. It's an issue where Kara is being tortured by the green sun and is completely out of commission. So Ruthie is up all day fighting monsters and protecting Kara's body. But in the movie, Ruthie's just gone. They're on the planet together for 5 minutes before Ruthie goes out to get water and is then kidnapped by the brigands. In all honesty, at the top of my head, I genuinely can't name a single thing that I think the movie does better than what happens in the book. I know that's another traditional example of, oh, the book was better than the movie, but usually there's some areas where I can say the movie did this better, or this movie made this look better than how I previously interpreted it. But in the case of Supergirl, every single change that was made to an iconic scene in the book was just made worse. But on the contrary, there are additions to the story that weren't in the book that I generally really love. 2 examples of this is Krypton and Superman. Woman of Tomorrow partially features Krypton, specifically just Kara's life on Argo, which this movie covers, but this movie also featured the destruction of Krypton and what that looked like in the DCU. I will say, this movie did double down on probably the worst thing in Superman 2025, and that's the fact that Zor-El acknowledged that Kal-El was being sent to Earth to conquer it. I forget exactly what is said, but more or less they doubled down on that reveal from Superman. So no, it was not a fabricated message. Which also kind of creates a plot hole within the DCU now, because Kara's parents didn't seem like evil Kryptonians. They seemed like good and loving people. They didn't seem like the type of people that would be okay with anyone conquering a planet, and to all their knowledge, Earth was currently being conquered by Kal. So why on earth wouldn't they warn Kara about Kal? And even if they were secretly evil as well, why wasn't their motive to send Kara to Earth to rule alongside Kal? They weren't given that message, and why wouldn't Kara ever talk to Clark about this? Honestly, I just hate this change, but that's not anything that's wrong with this specific movie, that's all on James Gunn. Anyways, talking about Superman, dude, David is just such a pleasure to have. He's always so fun whenever he's on screen. Every second he was on the screen in my theater, people were laughing. I saw my sister and my mom smiling. He is the face of the DCU, and they really did a good job establishing that. Honestly, just put Superman in everything. I really don't care. I love David Cornsweet, and I want him in every single movie I see in the DCU. All right, maybe not really, but you get the point. Getting on to talk about the other characters in the story, I want to start off with Krem and the Brigands. I think they did a very weird thing with him here because, in my opinion, I think he was a very serviceable villain in the comics. Like I said, he's not any Lex Luthor or Reverse Flash or the Joker. He's a different kind of villain. He is more or less just a scummy scumbag. But everything that was cool or interesting or mischievous about him from the comic is once again just kind of removed for him to be honestly, just a weirdo. And the Brigands were characterized as essentially space Nazis, people that started holocausts on planets and just killed and massacred for the fun of it. Whereas here, it seems like they were slave traders, specifically kidnapping women from other planets to make as brides. And I've been seeing everywhere since the movie came out, people saying, oh, Krem was never a good villain in the first place, so he was never gonna be a good villain. Once again, he wasn't awful, he wasn't a bad villain. He served his purpose in the comic, and his presence made for very tense moments within the story. There was never a moment within the movie where I felt tense when Krem was on screen. Even towards the end, where it hit the will they won't they with Ruthie killing Krem, I didn't care. Whereas in the comic, I felt my heart racing on that final issue, questioning if Ruthie was really gonna disobey Kara and kill this man. Krem wasn't a lame villain in the comics. I honestly think he was like a 6 to a 6.5 out of 10 type of villain, but this movie made him into like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. He really did just become a Guardians of the Galaxy Ravager. But one aspect of the story that I really liked that paralleled Kara and Ruthie's quest on hunting down someone who wronged them in the Brigands was Lobo. Jason Momoa was genuinely born for this role, and once again, every single time he was on screen, people in my theater were laughing, hooting, and hollering. He was just such a great addition to the movie. The only problem with Lobo in this movie is there's not enough Lobo. He's only there for like 2 or 3 scenes, but in every single one of them, he's a show stealer. Even if he is just crying aloud and laughing while he's swinging his chain. It was a little disappointing not hearing him refer to himself as the main man, or as far as I remember, I don't think he ever said the word frag. We got a bastard, but we didn't get a frag. But I really hope to see more of him in hopefully Man of Tomorrow or something else. He's just such a fun dude. Moving on to Ruthie, a lot of discourse I saw online surrounding her character claimed that she was just a very annoying and bratty girl within the movie, and I do not believe that at all. I generally believe that she was the most well-adapted character from Woman of Tomorrow. She's not exactly one-to-one with her character and how she was in that story, but she's very well close enough. And in all honesty, they took away one thing that I hated from Woman of Tomorrow, and that's the fact that she just doesn't shut up in that comic. There are pages on pages of her yapping. Well, not in terms of dialogue, but in terms of the inner monologue. But there's pages on pages of her yapping and yapping that kind of just got annoying in the story. Of course, it's a very well written book, but that was my biggest complaint about Woman of Tomorrow, that Ruthie just wouldn't shut up. And oftentimes, it really wasn't anything correlating with the story. But in the movie, there is no inner monologue, there is no narration. So, in my opinion, Ruthie became, honestly, a more likable character. Which is kind of funny that I think people got it wrong. She became less annoying. Going into the movie, after what I saw online surrounding her character, I was scared that we were going to get another Cassandra Cain from Birds of Prey, but it's nowhere near that bad. Now finally moving on to the star of the show, Millie Alcock as Supergirl. And I kind of got a hot take. I want to start off by saying that Millie Alcock is very good in the role. I really think that she captures Supergirl very well, and there's nothing that I would say is wrong with her acting. I just don't think I like this characterization of Supergirl. A lot of people that are coming to defense of this party girl version of Kara are saying that it's a movie that's adapting Woman of Tomorrow, where that's where she acts. And what I gotta say to that is, did we read the same book? She is not at all this much of a sorority girl in the book. She gets drunk, and there's definitely a foul-mouthed version of her, but I would never exactly describe her as gross or, well, I guess sorority-esque in the book, versus I definitely see that here. And I get that they're going for a more jaded version of the character, but I guess I'm just not a fan of that. It seems that she's going to be going on a different path in the future, and that over the course of this movie, she was built up into the character that we're going to be seeing in the DCU. I just really hope that we don't see a regression, because people tend to like this party girl version of Supergirl. And at times, I kind of felt like she was Star-Lord coded, specifically when they were on the bus in space together and they were being attacked by the pirates. The way she acts, the words she uses, I mean, even the fact that she's wearing a Walkman. She's fun, don't get me wrong, and Millie Alcock is great in the role. It just feels like DC wanted their Peter Quill, and they didn't need to do that. Now, I've already spoken about my criticisms on how it fares as a comic book movie and an adaptation of a specific comic. But even as just a general movie, when you look at it at the fundamentals of filmmaking, there are some very big glaring issues. Specifically in the areas of pacing, editing, and unfortunately the script. The script was probably the most unfortunate issue with the movie, especially since James Gunn greenlit this movie right away because of how amazing the script was in his opinion. And on top of that, he has the woman that wrote the script working on Wonder Woman and the Teen Titans movie within the DCU, which, dude, what are you doing? And as for the pacing, I really didn't feel like there were many moments for us to sit down and actually get to know the characters. Unfortunately, if I had to compare it to anything else, I wouldn't say it's paced like Suicide Squad from 2016, but unfortunately it kind of felt like it was paced like Super Mario Galaxy the movie. Yikes. And as for the editing, I thought that the beginning montage was perfectly fine, and it convinced me like, oh, the people that are online saying bad things about this movie are wrong, this looks good. But as soon as Krem lands on Ruthie's planet and kills her family, that's where there are a lot of just, what the hell is going on? Why would they make that cut? Why would they start the scene here? It just felt very off, and this might just sound very film snobby, but I don't know, the editing was just kind of bad. And I don't think the CGI was really all that bad, but it wasn't really all that good either. Now, speaking about what might have happened within that editing room, we gotta talk about what possibly might be considered the worst needle drop of all time. In all honesty, it was bad, but it wasn't that egregious. It's not the worst needle drop in a superhero movie ever. I mean, Venom 3 still exists, guys. And like I said, while it's not good, I see what they were going for. I understand the motivation behind it. They wanted a slow, soulful, acoustic song that would go along with Kara's feelings at that very moment. For those of you who still don't know, or don't remember somehow, the song they went with was a slowed down acoustic version of Jimmy Eats World, The Middle. So my only thought was, if they wanted a slowed down, soulful acoustic song, why didn't they just choose one that already exists? Why go for a cover of an existing pop song? While I don't think it would have been an absolutely perfect fit, the song I think that would have been better was a song they used in the trailer, which was What Becomes of the Brokenhearted. This movie made a lot of mistakes, but most importantly, I think the biggest mistake they made was the ending, because the ending of this movie takes a diarrhea dump on the end of the book. As I said earlier on, the ending of the book is an older version of Krem talking to an older version of Ruthie, begging for forgiveness. At this point in time, he has been redeemed, but that doesn't mean he deserves forgiveness. But instead, the movie went in a different direction. While the whole movie was about Kara telling Ruthie you should not be a killer because it haunts you, that decision will haunt you for the rest of your life. The ending of the movie has Kara convincing Ruthie with that exact same message, and she successfully talks Ruthie out of killing Krem, just for Kara to go in and kill him herself. What? It just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I saw the movie with my mom and sister, and they both loved that ending. They said that it was Kara taking on the responsibility of killing him herself, which that is exactly what they want it to be, but when the whole movie featured Kara preaching about how you shouldn't kill and how it will haunt you, I just don't understand why she would do it. It goes against everything she represents, and I don't know if that's supposed to be the point, but in a world where something like the Phantom Zone exists, why wouldn't they go in that direction? I'm not totally sure if Supergirl or Superman know that the Phantom Zone exists within the DCU yet, but I think that should have been something that was explored. So, where does this leave the DCU? With 2 movies and 4 general projects out of the way, where does the DCU stand? Personally, I don't think it's in a horrible position, but it's definitely not in a good position. People are losing their trust in James Gunn and his taste in quality, especially since apparently he was the one that chose the song for that needle drop. Of course, that's the least of our concerns right now, but still, that is an issue. He seems to be making a lot of obvious mistakes, especially when it comes to behind the scenes with something like that needle drop, or hiring the woman that wrote this movie to write Wonder Woman and Teen Titans. And on top of that, making choices like that in every regard. Hiring Christina Hodson and Andy Muschietti, the creative team behind The Flash, to be the creative team behind the next Batman movie, that's not a decision that's going to make people excited or faithful for the future of your DC universe. And on top of that, with Lanterns on the horizon looking like it's something that's disrespecting the source material, it just has me scared. I'm less optimistic right now as I was when I left the theaters for Superman. And I was less optimistic about the future of the DC universe after watching the conclusion of Peacemaker, because not only did it tend to go in a direction that I wasn't exactly a fan of, it just felt like an underbaked project. Supergirl, it feels like an underbaked project. I'm scared I'm gonna feel that for Lanterns. And the only thing I'm not necessarily scared for is Clayface, which is supposed to be a relatively irrelevant project within the universe. I really do think we should be focusing on the heavy hitters from here on out, because otherwise, within 2 or 3 years, I'm scared that the DCU will be gone. But I don't know. This movie, like I said, it's not horrible, it's not good, it's mid. It's a solid 5 out of 10, and depending on the day, that score might go down, but I do not ever see that score going up. But anyways, that's just my thoughts on the movie. I thought I was okay to not great. But just need to yap about that. So yeah, see ya.